The F1 season for 2023 is underway, and boy, was it a spectacle. Welcome to my debrief webinar, if you like. We're going to go through the key talking points of the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend. This is going to be difficult viewing for McLaren and Ferrari fans, just a pre-warning for you. Obviously, the start of the season does mean that for F1 fans, we are entering a prolonged period of hibernation. Friends seen way down in the single figures per month. If you are my friend and you're watching this, you don't exist. No, I'm kidding. If you are my friend and you're watching this, don't send help, send coffee. It's the Australian Grand Prix in 4 weeks' time. In fact, other than a little peak in August when the summer break hits, it really is 8 or 9 months of having no friends. Before we go into the race in Bahrain, we're just going to focus on some quick facts about the country. I thought, this would be an interesting segment to do. So the first quick fact for you, shut up Scott, no one cares, focus on the race. What? There were some unbelievable numbers to come out of this weekend in terms of F1. Cars were hitting the speed trap into turn 1 at 190 miles an hour. Max Verstappen got pole with a time of under 1 minute 30. And women featured in just 1.54% of Drive to Survive Series 5. Lord of the Rings has more female dialogue than that. Pretty shocking numbers then, but first we'll look at the practice sessions. Remarkable scenes on the Friday when Fernando Alonso found himself at the top of the timing sheets after free practice 2. I actually did a bit of reading, and the last time Alonso topped a timing session was on horseback. And that season, the female contribution on Drive to Survive was actually 0% because it didn't exist yet. Lance Stroll was declared fit to race on the Friday, despite having an injured wrist. Coming back from the closed season with an injured wrist. I'm not going to offer any comment on how that injury was picked up. Obviously, though, the qualifying that came on the Saturday, it's the first real look at the start of a new season at the pace of the various teams. The teams take the sandbags out, so to speak, although I do think McLaren forgot. As all the talk had been suggesting, it was Red Bull who had the pace and locked out the front row, and that slapping sound you heard was the foreheads of Mercedes and Ferrari fans hitting the table. Onto the race itself then, and I don't really know how that's managed to get in there. Alonso was starting in P5 for the race, and I would say that right at the very top of Lance Stroll's must-not-do list would be not to torpedo Alonso into turn 4. Sadly, no notice was taken of that, and proceeded to torpedo Alonso into turn 4. Thankfully for McLaren, though, it couldn't really get any worse after qualifying. Actually, it did get worse. Team principal Andrea Stella probably fancied a pint, to be honest, after that performance. Unfortunately for them, the electronic advertising boards that they had on their car, but a new innovation for this season. Well, unfortunately, that was the only part of the car that actually worked all weekend. Oscar Piastri was struggling with an electrical issue, which was almost certainly caused by a rogue mechanic at Alpine. In fact, between you and me, I have been able to get hold of some security footage from Alpine's HQ as Oscar Piastri was breaking down, so make of this what you will. Lando Norris, meanwhile, his car kept needing to be filled with air, presumably because that's what it seemed to be running on. So a tough weekend for McLaren, but, they can take solace knowing that if they can just sort their reliability out, then they'll still be 156 seconds off the pace. Williams, meanwhile, low-key 10th place, already have an 1/8 of the points that they accrued all of last season. I had 3 pages on pelters aimed at Williams, but I've had to just change them all to McLaren. That's it for McLaren, though. No more abuse in their direction. Instead, it's time for a game of Ocon penalty bingo. And I'm delighted to reveal that I did actually get myself a full line this weekend in Ocon penalty bingo. Speeding in the pit lane, wrong grid position, and not serving a penalty properly. Got a lot of criticism from my friends for putting that one in. But who's laughing now? Well, not Ocon, that's for sure. Nothing for wearing jewellery or exercising his right to freedom of speech, though. So Short of a full house, but, long season ahead, there's always time. As the race developed then, it seemed like the most interesting narrative was Alonso's pursuit of a podium place. He found himself coming up behind Hamilton in P5 it was at the time, I believe, and Hamilton was obviously focusing on defending the key overtaking zones, so that's into turn 1, into turn 4 and 14. But the mistake Hamilton made really was that when Alonso's behind you, it's really these overtaking zones that you need to be aware of. They're the ones where you're really susceptible to getting done. And sure enough, into turn 10, Alonso did indeed take the position. In what I would describe as an early contender for Alonso is a boss moment of the season. Having said that, looking at the pace of the Aston Martin, I think it's going to be a list as long as your arm by the time we get round to December. Now we come to the other team that had quite a bad day, Ferrari. They were cracking out the champagne without the sham. Charles Leclerc stayed true to his opening title pose and was let down by a failing car, which confirmed a rare moment of genuine insight from this channel. The yellow flag means there's an incident ahead, probably Charles Leclerc's gone off somewhere and they're having to sort out the situation. Having said that, predicting Ferrari reliability issues over the last few years is a bit like predicting the next Pope to be Catholic, or Max Verstappen to win. Speaking of Max Verstappen winning, that was the slide that I had earmarked for discussing the fight for first place, but that's pretty much all we have in terms of talking point for that one. So, Verstappen did indeed win by about 12 weeks, as once again, collectively, the foreheads of Ferrari and Mercedes fans hit the table. The good news for fans of a title fight is that this was the largest margin of victory in an opening race for a constructor for as long as I could be bothered to look. I mean, literally, I went back to 04 Schumacher era and it was still only 34 seconds and they won by 38. So, sets the tone. It really was the most dominant sporting display for at least 3 hours as Liverpool went on to smash Man United 7-0 later on Sunday afternoon. But owing to all the problems with Ferrari and Sainz burning through his tyres like a barbecue, Alonso did get himself a very comfortable P3 in the end, to the delight of my crack, and probably to the delight of everyone else as well. It did get me thinking, where does Fernando Alonso rank in terms of the all-time great Spanish athletes? And the closest competitor, I would say, is Rafa Nadal. So I've done a little comparison to put the two up against each other. Now, let's consider the stats. Fernando Alonso, he has 2 World Drivers' Championships, he has 32 race wins, and he has 1 podium in his 40s. So if we just compare that against Rafa Nadal has no World Drivers' Championships, he has no race wins, and he has no podiums in his 40s. So the results are there for everyone to see. We'll finish up then with some key learnings from Bahrain. Firstly, Ferrari and Mercedes fans are going to spend a lot of this season with their foreheads on the table. If 41-year-old Fernando Alonso can get a podium, then I would say it's definitely not too late for you to give up on your dreams. And also, don't torpedo your teammate into turn 4, but you probably knew that already. Actually, a lot then for the Bahrain debrief webinar. I hope you've learnt something from today's education. I'll be back in the coming weeks to deliver more breathtaking insight. And would you look at that, we have just about finished on time without getting cut